two separate but equal nations on one landmass. Or, like it is on the back of your dollar bill, two governments well involved in one. The Supreme Court case Plexus versus Ferguson affirms that. Two separate but equal nations. What further affirms it is the Dred Scott case. Everybody's heard the Scott versus Sanford case. Right? That further affirms it. Do not believe the people, white supremacists. Now, what I mean by white supremacists is that that's a political ideology. Many of us here in this room are white supremacists. Just keeping it real. Many of us in this room may be white supremacists. Many of you that walk around here, you call yourself black? No disrespect, you're a white supremacist. Just keeping it real. Call yourself black, white, Negro, Indian, West Indian, any of these slave labels, that is a white supremacist mentality. Why? Because in 1854, these Europeans got together and said, you know what, we have our beefs and differences, but look, man, we all have one common goal. We are outnumbered on the planet 11 to 1. And we can't hold these aboriginals here down physically for much longer. We have to have an educational revolution. So we all got to get together. So these minorities got together and they said, okay, we are no longer German, French, Dutch, English, Irish. We're white. They took your name. We read the definition. They took your name. They traded places. And then instead of saying this is the Moorish nation we subjugated, we rewrite in history, reconstruction. And what do we call them? You're black, you're Trini, you're Jamaican, you're an Indian. We were already doing it. They already had their men running in and out of our women to further broaden the human bouquet spectrum. So somebody like her, or they let her run into the interior and live in teepees on the run. And they retell the stories of their Indians. Somebody like you, they take you to the eastern seaboard and put you on the auction block. There's a book out everybody can get by Jack Forbes called Africans and Native Americans. Get the book.
Africans and what?
The Africans and Native Americans. It's in any and every major bookstore. Jack D. Forbes. Get the book. Yeah, he still has the Christian paradigm of slave trade across the Atlantic, but he gives some real interesting things in there. Like for the fact that there's actual records in Europe or in Spain of Native Americans being stolen and sold on the auction blocks in Spain with names like Ali and Muhammad, Native Americans. Guess what they were classified when they got to Spain? Say it again? Negroes. Oh, so just the opposites going on. The Dred Scott versus, I kind of got off. The Dred Scott versus Sanford case, a lot of people will tell you, oh, that was overturned, the 14th Amendment. How many people have heard that? You can't use the Dred Scott case, it was overturned. How many people have heard that? How many people believe that you can't use the Dred Scott case, that it was actually overturned? Is everybody familiar with the decision of the Dred Scott decision? No, sir. Dred Scott decision, Judge Roger Taney said this: Dred Scott has no power. We have to toss the case for lack of jurisdiction. Because Dred Scott in his own deposition said he was a Negro descendant of African slaves and has no power in this court, slave or free. He can never be a citizen of our several state society with the power to sue in federal court. Never. So we can't hear his case. That's why they call him plaintiff in error. How many people here think that they can't use that in the present day? You don't think so? That's honest. That's big. Big. He's with me. He traveled here with me. Now, I'm going to show you why, with basic history that we learned in grade school, why that's a lie. We learned in grade school about the three powers of government, didn't we? Three powers of government, or the three houses of government: legislative, Executive, judicial, right? Executive does what? Enforces the laws. Legislative does what? Makes the laws. Judicial does what? Interprets the law. It's three-tiered so that each one is a check and balance for the other, so that no one of them can decide on their own issues. Understand? You see what I'm getting at now? How in the world can legislation, as in the 14th Amendment, overturn a decision coming from the Supreme Court? It can't. There's no legislation that can overturn a Supreme Court decision. What is the only thing that can overturn a Supreme Court decision? Another Supreme Court decision. Has there been another Supreme Court decision to supersede the decision made in Dred Scott versus Sanford? No. And I defy anybody to show me. There hasn't been. The 14th Amendment conferred no real citizenship. Sorry to say, a lot of your black leaders have been misleading you. It confers no real citizenship. Research the slaughterhouse cases, 1866. You'll find out. The decision was like, there is no quote-unquote 14th Amendment citizenship that gives you first-class citizenship status. No such thing. No such thing. So the Dred Scott versus Sanford case stands. But it's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if we desire to be like Europeans and we desire to live under this seal as opposed to our own. We want to keep being the prodigal son. They have no problem sitting in this seat in your place. They don't got no problem with it. They'll do it for another 50 years. They have no problem. The last case I'm going to deal with, it seems like it may be unrelated, but it's very pertinent. It's the case Roe versus Wade. Who's familiar with Roe versus Wade? What was Roe versus Wade about? It was the famous abortion case where you had people saying that, well, abortion
is maybe the Far East. Dang. That's what I heard.
Heartbreaker for most people, this whole issue has never been about race. Race, what happened to this man at law? Erase out of your mind the racism garbage. That's what it is. Erase out of your mind and just think jurisprudence, the science of positive law. Think that for a second. All right? Firstly, a last name is your surname or national parentage name. Who's Johnny Gamage? Not an Asiatic. Johnny Gamage is an Englishman. That's number one. Number two, what happened to the cops? What were they tried under? Remember everybody was like the cops, the people who advocated, on the side of the cops were saying, oh, it's double jeopardy. They're trying them again for the same thing. But under what? Civil rights violations, right? Question, is there such thing as civil rights laws? Who said no? Anybody agree? Anybody disagrees? Right after the Civil War, Civil Rights Bill of I believe it was 1866. Slaughterhouse case was in 1883. I believe it was 1866. Civil Rights Bill was passed under a lot of controversy. Afterwards, you had all kinds of riots and all kinds of other things. And then you had the slaughterhouse cases which determined two things. Number one, that the 14th Amendment conferred no real citizenship. And number two, guess what? The Civil Rights Bill was unconstitutional. It was repealed. Now the real question, the real why, is why does the president have to sign it every 25 years? It's a bill. It was never law. So what happened to those police officers when they said, oh, we're going to try you again under civil rights and convict you? They did that for all of us dumb Negroes out here. we would be like, oh, just